Hopefully we'll have a better listography next time. Sorry for wasting all your time with this Boston one. No, I'm kidding. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Listography. Joe, I'm here with Kramzer and Jason, and we're all real excited to be here tonight because we are doing Boston, the whole band, named after Boston, the city. This is a weird band to do a listography of because it's short discography. There's only 6 albums. The classic Boston album, the self-titled, and to a lesser extent, Don't Look Back and Third Stage, are held in pretty high regard. The self-titled, very high regard. People love it. It's a classic of AOR, kind of launched the whole genre of AOR. A very interesting story about it. We'll get to that when we actually talk about the album. But what is your familiarity with Boston? I'm going to go out on a limb and say none of us had heard any of their albums past Third Stage. Am I correct?
I remember them being released. I remember seeing like reviews written up and stuff like that, but I never listened to them. But yeah, I know the first 3, don't know the last 3.
No, I never even listened to Third Stage before this because don't even really like Amanda. So it's never my appeal. I knew all of the radio songs, which is to know I know a few Off Don't Back and all of the debut and nothing else. So yeah, that's my familiarity. I liked the Greatest Hits or whatever that I had a good bit when I was like 9 or 10, but you know, you can't, when you're shuffling through classic rock radio, you can't avoid Boston songs. You just can't avoid it. And yeah, so, and they never really had a rapport or notoriety as being a albums band. So, you know, I never really sought out to deep dive into Boston. And so that's where I'm at going into this.
Yeah, same. If you listen to just their greatest hits and you just had that album, you'd think, hey, wow, this band must have had a whole bunch of big albums back in the 70s and 80s. Look at all these hits. I can hear these all on the radio every single day. But that's not really it at all. They really just had Boston self-titled and a couple other tracks, and that's pretty much the entire greatest hits package. So, like I said, it's a weird band to be doing a listography of. Weird band in general, just their whole history and everything else. So we'll get into that. Might as well just get right into this. These, especially these bottom 2, I don't know how you'll feel about the third. And I think we're all going to be in agreement again, pretty much the entire time. These were some rough listens. So let's get these out of the way real quick. Who's going to be the first?
Can I go first? I'm chomping at the bit to eviscerate.
Jason, please.
Life, Love, and Hope at the bottom for me. I think the whole first half of this video is going to be a bloodbath.
A Boston Massacre, big time.
Yeah, this is one of the worst albums I've ever heard. Horrible production. The drums sound terrible. There is a drummer credited, but they sound programmed. I don't know if he played them and then they just like quantized the crap out of it, but there's no feel. The sound is garbage. Everything's bad. The writing is terrible. The performances are bad. Even Tom's guitar tone isn't good on this record. I don't know what happened here. It's so bad. If you want to really hear what I'm talking about, go straight to the track If You Were in Love and listen to that and go straight into Someday. Those 2 tracks back to back, maybe the worst 2 consecutive songs on any record ever. Really, really horrible stuff. You've got these inexplicable female vocals coming in, like you wouldn't even know it was Boston. It is just horrible, horrible stuff. And I read something that said like, Boston fans know that the 11-year wait or whatever it is par for the course because of Tom and his sort of like mad scientist, like genius studio work, but it really feels like he's never recorded music before here. It is just really, really, really bad.
Dynamite review. You know an album's bad when Jason just lists the most skeleton elements of what a music album is. The sound is bad, the performance is bad, the writing is bad. And bad is the wrong adjective. It's among the worst stuff ever recorded in rock or pop history. This is a 1 star. For me, I would go lower than 1 star if I didn't have like a strict ruling that like if you get it on tape and it's recorded and sold, then at least you accomplished something. But this is terrible. I will say so far, this is by far the worst album that we've listened to. And the thing that makes it even worse is the fact that they put out an album years before this, which we'll talk about soon enough, that sounds almost like this, and they made no corrections to it at all and just did it again on this friggin' album. It is terrible. And what's up with the drums? This might be the worst drum album of all time. There's literally the same beat on 6 different songs, and none of the rhythms of the melodies match at once, and they're all different, but they just use the same recorded drum robotic pattern over and over. Really weird, tacky backing organ synth on the title track. There's like on Heaven, what's the one song? Heaven on Earth? The leadoff song. It's just really lame, sensual, coy vibe that they're doing with it. It is just terrible. And then, like Jason was saying with the female vocals on If You Were in Love, who are you? Where did you come from? It just comes out of nowhere. Who is this new singer? Why is it here? God, this, Buzz, your Boston album, woof. It's so bad. It's just, 1 star, just terrible. It's plastic and poppy and poopy. It's just really bad. It's really bad. Life, Love, and Hope is what I'm talking about, by the way. Number 6.
Yeah, there's nothing really else to add. For, a band whose classic album was recorded in a like dark, dank basement by himself, the fact that this could sound so bad makes no sense. It's like he forgot everything he knew in 1976 and just, it's inexplicable that this is an album. It's the worst album I've listened to in my time here in Listography. Just did not need to be made, has no point in existence, and it's just nothing. I love a good cheesy, like 5 guitar orchestra attack, but there's nothing even for me on this album, and it's inexplicable. So let's move right along. No point in dwelling on that thing. What do we got next?
Cram said Life, Love, and Hope is a 1 star. For me, it's a 0 star, and so is my number 5, Corporate America. Again, what's going on with these drums? Like, it's not that hard to record better sounding drums than this, and at least make them have some sort of feel. They're so rigid. It's just so bad. The songs aren't good again. The vocals are bad. The female vocals are so generic sounding. It's just really, really bad. The band's totally lost their identity at this point. Just no idea. It's almost as bad as Life, Love, and Hope. They're pretty much the same record, just total pieces of trash. Just throw them in the garbage. They're horrible.
We are recording this among a collective kind of agreement for the staff here that we want to be more enthusiastic about our love for music and not seem so cynical, but literally impossible with these album people. There is no silver lining here. I'm with Jason. Corporate America, the second worst album I've heard while being on this channel. Makes all the mistakes, like I said, that Life, Love, and Hope, or whatever it's called, that's what makes the other one so worse, is they just do it all over again like they were really onto something with Corporate America. They're not. Drums are terrible. That's one thing that really sticks out. Like Jason said, the leadoff track, I Had a Good Time, might be the corniest song without being fun or campy at all I've ever heard. Hey, I had a really good time. It's just terrible. Stare Out Your Window has like this weird, like wannabe Oasis Britpop style chorus on it. So at least there's like these little grains of sand that make it a little slightly, and I mean really minimal here, 0.0001% better than Life, Love, and Hope, or whatever. Hope I never have to live and let through life hearing that album, or whatever it's called. It's just terrible. Some of the lyrics and kind of message of corporate America are so over the top and on the nose. In corporate America, the song is like maximize, but you can take your bottom line and shove it. I think even in old Boston, the first few albums, they're pretty soft band. They're not they don't have a lot of bite, not a lot of snarl to them. But at least those albums have a lot of, music capabilities and, really well crafted. This one doesn't have anything. It's just terrible. It's awful. And I'm not done using those words yet. We got a few more albums to go. So Corporate America, number 5, 1 star again.
I'm with you guys again. This is such a ham-fisted attempt at like social activism. The lyrics are so bad. I mean, just the song Corporate America is, God, it's hard to listen to. I actually almost like this less than the other one, but at least this one has like okay guitar stuff sometimes. But other than that, the vocals are bad. Everything is bad. Fran Cosmo and Brad Delp share vocals. So at least you get a couple Brad Delp on there. Yeah, there's just nothing good going on here. Nothing I would ever want to hear again, ever. Garbage. I'd give it a half a star. It's slightly better, I guess, than the Live, Love, Laughing, whatever, LOL 2013 album, but this one blows. I wasn't surprised because I knew it sucked. I've read reviews. I remember reading a 1-star Rolling Stone review when it came out. It's sad. It's sad, really. So let's move on again to number 4.
I didn't dig through reviews the way you normally do, so I didn't find any really bad ones. Everything that I saw was kind of forgiving, and I was surprised at how forgiving it was. I saw one that was talking about how it took so long for one of these albums to come out because he was having his studio remodeled. Like, that's some kind of like excuse, or I don't know. The critics seem to be generous, is what I'm saying. And
does he have this reputation and prowess of being like a studio mastermind? Like we're waiting for the new Brian Eno record or something? Like, where is this coming from?
Well, yeah, the first record he did in his basement by himself. He built all his own guitar pedals. So he's supposed to be like this genius of sonic sculpting or something. But boy, you wouldn't know it from these last 3. I've got Walk On at number 4. This album came out in 94, but because it took so long, it's way like taken out of time. It's like their hair metal album, basically. Doesn't sound like Boston except for one song, Get Organized, Get Reorganized. But other than that, it's pretty generic. You could be any number of hair bands or whoever. The drums don't sound good again. You could literally take one microphone, stick it in the middle of a room, and record someone playing drums, and it would sound better than, like, they're actively making them sound terrible. I don't know how it's happening, but it's really bad. Walking at Night on this thing is supposed to be like his guitar showcase, and it's just bad sounding guitars. I don't know. It's not like impressive. It doesn't sound good. It's really, really pitiful. This one's a half star.
I also upped the half star for Walk On. I'll go 1.5, which is to say it's bad. It is a bad album. So we're not off to a good start here with Boston. Going back in time also. So chronologically, it kind of just gets worse and worse and worse. Jason nailed it. The song comes out in 94, but it sounds like every song is made for an 80s montage action movie. Yeah, I don't have too much more to say. It's like he's trying to be like, have like this Top Gun forceful guitar mystique, but it's more like instead of being cruising and rocketing down the runway, you're actually kind of stuck in the airport food court with like nothing going on. It's pretty bad. Yeah, it's Walking at Night. That instrumental Jason was talking about sounds like he's trying to do some Eddie Van Halen stuff with tone and playing, and falls flat on its ass. What's Your Name is kind of fun and dumb. That might be a little bit of the reason why it's half star. But that's all I got to say. The and the mix of the vocals, the vocals are just like so heavy and loud and singing their heart out, but the way they're mixed, they're stuck in the back, and it sounds like there's all this power that's supposed to be at the forefront, and you don't get any of it. It's just terrible. It's really bad. Walk On, number 4.
Well, here's where I disagree a little bit, because I think this album is okay. The definition of mediocre. I kind of like the guitars. It's sort of like the framework of Boston is there, but with a inferior singer, songwriting, guitar that you mostly heard before. You know, they're trying to get that sound again. It's wildly out of place, like you guys said. It sounds like, 87, sort of like Whitesnake cover band ish, very hair metal, which I don't mind, but it's not a good album. It didn't need to be made. There's nothing here that you haven't already heard better in a previous Boston album. It's just copying themselves in sort of like, caricatures of themselves, but not really themselves. So, for 8 years it took to make this album. It's not great. You're not really impressing us with your songwriting or producing or anything really. So yeah, it would be like a 2-star for me. I didn't hate listening to it, but it's just, there's no reason to ever listen to it again outside of doing this list. So that's another pass.
Well, we're staying chronological. My number 3 is Third Stage. So I listened to these chronologically. I started with the debut Boston and worked forward. And when I listened to this one, I thought it was a pretty big step down from the first two. Pretty bland, pretty mediocre. But if I had listened to it in the opposite order, this would be like, I don't know, like the best album I ever heard. So, this record at least sounds like it was made in a professional studio by people who know how to write songs. It actually sounds pretty similar to the first two Boston records. The guitar tones are kind of the same. There's a little bit more reverb on it, and there's a big emphasis on the power ballads on this record. You've got Amanda, which was the big hit. You also have My Destination, To Be a Man, and Holly Ann. Can't You Say You Believe in Me is also kind of a borderline power ballad. So a good half of this record is like tailor-made for middle school dances. So it's pretty, not that substantial as far as like great songwriting, but at least it sounds like a real record. I'll give it that.
Yeah. With Jason so far, we're going back in time. Number 3 for me is Third Stage. It is Pet Sounds compared to the bottom 2 Boston albums. It is that big of a leap, but I still think it's a lousy album. Never really liked Amanda, never really liked Cool the Engines, kind of the big, although the Cool the Engines and some other stuff, like Jason said, is still, still clinging on to some of the 70s stuff, which is much better. But again, this is just like so extravagant and over the top. And like Jason said, ballads everywhere. It's like this super soft, sensitive machismo hair metal vibe almost that just doesn't really work for me. It seems like everything is a big love scene from a Tony Scott movie. My Destination is like a big Elton John anthem played by like Poison. I don't think they're playing to their strengths like they do on the first couple records. And it's almost like the songwriting is just so simple. Every song, like it's just almost like a call and response between vocals and guitar. It's not very inventive. I just don't think it's a very good album. Third Stage. And that will probably be the end of my super negativity here. So take a deep breath. Number 3, Third Stage for me.
Also my number 3, and looks like we might have for the first time in history just a complete, I hope, Jason better not mess it up by putting Don't Look Back at number 1. I swear to God. But no, Third Stage for me, it sounds pretty great. I like this kind of music. I'm unashamed to admit it. Amanda, cheesy, but, a good kind of 80s cheese, 36,000 guitars layered on top of each other, just coming at you. I think We're Ready. It's pretty cool. I really like their harmonies when they do it. I think Brad Delp is a good singer. If you like that kind of style, I think he's one of the better ones. So we're ready. Cool the engines, Amanda. They all tick the boxes that I'm looking for in a Boston song, which is ton of guitar, the super high voices, the chorus, the vocals, the layers of sound coming at you. So it works for me. The second half of the album kind of gets bogged down in some like weird concept about going off to a new civilization or some mumbo jumbo. It doesn't work. Too many power ballads there at the end. Again, it's 1,000 times better than their other albums. It's a mediocre 2.5 to 3 stars for me. So it's enjoyable for what it is, but it's not a great or really even good record. So 8 years between this and Don't Look Back, and there's like 5 or 6 real songs on here, a bunch of instrumentals. It's like, come on, man. You can do better than that. In no way was it in running for the top 2. It's pretty far behind.
A complete reversed chronological list from me. I've got Don't Look Back at number 2. It's basically a carbon copy of the debut with slightly worse songs, except for a few songs that I think are among their very best. Those being the title track and Feelin' Satisfied. I think those stack up to the best songs on the first album. But the rest of the record is just slightly weaker. It's not that sort of like hit after hit after hit type of record that the first one is, but it does sound good. I think some of the guitar work on it's pretty cool. Not my favorite type of 70s rock music, but for what it is, it's decent. Not a bad record. Give it like 2.5.
Agree 100%. Don't Look Back. We're going complete reverse order. Going back in time. We got, Jason said it. It's just a little bit of the poor man's debut. It's got more filler, but in exactly those songs you mentioned are the ones that I think stack up to the stuff on the first one. It's probably, I don't really care for the journey and how it operates kind of right off the bat, connecting. It's easy and Don't Look Back, but it almost seems a little lazy compared to the debut, like needed maybe a couple more songs, maybe try a little bit harder to get in some new territory. And obviously no one's listening to Boston and getting blown away or seeking Boston for the amazing rhythm section. But there's a couple of, I think it's significantly a step down here than on the first album. I like Don't Look Back, but that just really janky, simplistic bass line on it just kills me. The bump, 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 and can't stand it for some reason. I dated a girl in college and she pointed that out to me, and it's never lost my mind. I've just been like, oh yeah, this is really stupid and annoying. But it's a decent album. I'll go 2.5 stars, which for me means decent. By the way, I'll throw back on Third Stage. I'll go 2 stars. So a couple of really good songs on this. I can listen to it all the way through. It's pretty short, sweet. Sounds great, obviously, like Jason said. But the big problem with me with Boston and why I do like the debut a good bit, why I don't really hold them in very high regard is they are incredibly soft for me, just very fluffy, not a lot of snarl, meaning, no rock sexuality, no message, no anything. It's all so casual and it sounds great, but it's just very easy listening hard rock, which is fine at times. And like I said, I like it, but it's never going to be, I'm never going to have a Boston t-shirt and can't wait for them to, get a concert near me or anything like that. But for what it's worth, I do enjoy it. And I like this album a little bit. So number 2, Don't Look Back.
Also my number 2. So that's good. We're totally in sync here. As far as ranking goes, I like this one a fair bit. It was considered for 78 even on my top 5. It didn't make it, but it was considered. Don't Look Back. It's always been one of my favorites. I don't mind the walking, thumping, plodding, whatever janky bass line. I think the guitars are great, obviously. It's a carbon copy of the original, of the debut album. But I think there's, Feeling Satisfied, Don't Look Back, even A Man I'll Never Be, I think could have been on the first album without really any drop of quality. I really like the harmony vocals on Feeling Satisfied. I don't know, there's not a lot to say about it. It's exactly how you think it sounds. It's just a Boston album. There's no exploring new territory. There's no trying new things. It's exactly the same sound as the original, which I like. I think it's good. It's, 4 stars for me. I can listen to it anytime. It just kind of tickles that pleasure zone just right for me, because I like 8 guitars in harmony, screaming together. So it really just comes down to taste. If you like this kind of music, this is as close, almost as good as it gets. If you don't like this music, this album is not going to convince you that Boston is a great and important band or anything like that.
And the same can be said for their debut. Boston is my number 1. It's a great sounding record. Sounds fantastic. Tom Schultz guitar, very unique, distinctive guitar tone. The tunes are catchy, they rock. And I think they capture the spirit of the time that they were made in. Obviously, I wasn't there, I wasn't alive, but from everything I've seen and what I know about the time, I can imagine this coming out and driving around with your friends if you're in high school and just thinking it was amazing. So I totally get that. Didn't sound really like anything else at the time. Brad Delp's voice is amazing on it. But having said all that, it is kind of clean. It's got this really, doesn't have a lot of like rough edges to it. It's a very sanitary sounding record for being a rock record. The songs aren't that exciting or interesting. It's kind of vanilla. There is some scorching organ on it, which I think doesn't get brought up enough. The organ on it is really great as well. So I totally get why this was a huge selling record. It makes total sense. I mean, you still hear it practically every song from this record on the radio still today. And I think it deserves all of that, but at the same time, I don't think it's like an all-time great record and won't be among my top 100 of all time. But I think it's a really good record and a cool kind of 70s artifact.
I think that's a hell of a review, and I agree with it completely. I don't think it's a great album. I think it's a great piece of rock history. I wouldn't want rock history without it. It doesn't really match my personal tastes, but I do, like Jason said, think it deserves all the attention that it gets. And good God, Scorchin' Organ is the bomb-ass band name. That's pretty cool. I wish someone's got to jump on that. Yeah, it's just too polished and too clean. It's just, like Jason said, a really sanitized version of what rock was 10, 8, 6 years before that. It's kind of rock for the suburbs. Stuff, your parents could find this album and not be worried about you listening to it, which is fine. It sounds great. It's not quite a great album for me. I will say it's really good. So I'll go 3.5 out of 5 for me. They're not really a song I don't like on it. Smokin's probably my least favorite, but I still don't mind listening to it. One problem I have is the track listing. Don't like More Than a Feeling as an opener. It's gotta be Foreplay Long Time. I think putting your imprint as a debut number 1 song, just with that long organ crushing just opening, would have been super cool with all the sliding rock sliding guitar rock, it kind of sounds coming in. That would have been the opener I would have gone with. But yeah, I think it's really good. Obviously, this is a really, like Joe was alluding to at the intro, this is a band that is almost entirely known by just this one album. And yeah, it's a really good album. Number 1, Boston, the debut. And we got a trifecta, don't we, Joe?
We sure do, Cramser. Obviously, this is the pinnacle of Boston's career, which is kind of sad because it's their first album. But I think this is such an amazing album, such an amazing story, the way it got made, basically just by Tom in his basement. He went to CBS or what, I think it was CBS, and he was worried that his production skills weren't going to be on par with the professionals. And basically they didn't know anything. So he bootlegged his own album and recorded it without their interference. Only the vocals were recorded elsewhere, I think in a real studio. So for me, this is one of the great stories in rock and roll history. I wish they had done other stuff after this, but it didn't make my 76 list, only because, like Jason said, every single song can be found on the radio. And we say that sometimes jokingly, but literally every one of this album can be heard all the time on the radio, and you just hear it so much. It's ubiquitous. It's in shows and movies and on the radio and, at the grocery store. You can hear More Than a Feeling pumping, through Giant Eagle and Walmart. And I think it's an amazing album. Every song on here is great. I can listen to it even now and not be totally tired of it. I love the organ on Foreplay. I love the clavinet solo on Smokin'. It's just a lot of cool elements. I love the guitar. I love Delp's voice. And, trying to think like the first time you ever heard this, or in the 70s, if you had heard this, it must have just blown your mind. Everything is just perfect. Every pick slide, and there's like 1,000 pick slides. I've never seen an artist, guitarist, use so many pick slides than Tom Scholz. Maybe a little bit, that's probably my only criticism of this entire album. Maybe a couple too many pick slides. But other than that, I have no, the bass is great, the guitars are great, the vocals are great, organ, everything on this album is great. The production sounds amazing. You just have heard it too many times. It kind of loses a little bit of its power. I still think it's a 5-star album, one of the great 70s AOR albums of all time. So it's a great number one. I just wish they had done some other stuff that kind of lived up to it. They didn't. So I don't know. I mean, that's Boston. That's pretty much it. If you're really looking to get into Boston, just buy the debut album. It's all there. Or just turn on the radio for a day, record it onto your cassettes like I used to do. I don't know. Usually we talk about whether or not we like a band or not at the end. I think everyone knows exactly how we feel about Boston at this point. So if you have any additional thoughts.
Too many slide picks. You sound like Jeffrey Jones and Amadeus. He's like, it was very good, Mozart, just too many notes. Yeah, no, it's weird for a band that has 4 albums that I would say are bad to abysmal. I wouldn't come out and say I hate Boston, because the first album's good, and I don't even think of the other ones when I think of Boston. It's not like the aggregate of these star ratings are like rounding it out to make me be like, ugh, Boston. That's how I've always felt. Just like, Boston. If I hear Don't Look Back on the radio, am I in the mood to change the station or not? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. That's kind of where I'm at. So if they didn't have the debut and Don't Look Back was like the pinnacle, then I'd be like, what? This is a really lousy band. What is the fascination? But obviously with the strength of the debut, they're fine. I'm glad they exist, because it is unique.
It's a very, very weird discography, and we talk about lightning in the bottle sometimes on this channel. And I mean, I don't know if there's a better example of that than the Boston debut, because I mean, he made this amazing sounding record, and then seemingly just like his ability to do that deteriorated over time. Just really strange how that happened. Very odd. So if anyone saw the recent, well, maybe not recent at this point, if anyone saw our CCR video, I said we were about to record a listography where 3 of the albums were worse than Mardi Gras. This is it. I don't know exactly when you're seeing this. I think we're holding on to this for a while and releasing it somewhere down the line. But yeah, that's what I was referring to, Boston.
If you've been watching, you know that Long Road Out of Eden by Eagles, we all unequivocally despise. Thought, no one would ever come and beat it, but Boston did twice. So good for Boston.
Yeah. I'm actually not prepared. I don't know if I'm prepared to say that yet.
Well, it's different because there's like a pretentiousness behind Long Road Out of Eden, where they really thought they were giving the world like their gift from heaven. This one is just kind of like ignorant. Like, it's so bad. They're completely different.
Totally different types of bad, but I don't know which one's worse. I'd have to really go back and listen to both, but I will not do that.
I still think, well, Other Voices in Full Circle are definitely in the running for me, along with Long Road Out of Eden for worst albums. Mardi Gras is in there, but these two, Corporate America and Live, Laugh, Love, Live, Life, Love, and Hope. It doesn't matter. They're really bad. So that's definitely sort of the very bottom of what we've come across so far.
To me, there's no way Mardi Gras by CCR is anywhere in. I mean, we're talking major league awful albums and then single A kind of.
All right, Mardi Gras is a little bit better. But actually, see, I don't know, because Long Ride Out of Eden, I didn't hate as much as you guys. But we'll get into this some other day on our worst albums we've ever heard segment that I'm sure we'll do someday. I think that really just wraps up Boston. I think we've probably talked about them enough. Like the video. I hope like a bunch of Boston fans don't find this video and we're like really hoping that we would have some nice things to say about some of these later albums. If so, we're sorry. Like the video anyway. Leave a comment with your preferred ranking. Subscribe to the channel. Check the description for our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Hopefully we'll have a better listography next time. Sorry for wasting all your time with this Boston one. No, I'm kidding. See you next time.